Many years ago, possibly in 2012, Just Trains released a London, Midland and Scottish Railway Patriot class add-on for Train Simulator, depicting a few members of the class in their original unrebuilt condition, but they never added the entire class, for whatever reason. The game has come a long way since then, and the JT Patriot has had a decent run. But now we have a brand new version of this classic 460 from Caledonia Works. For this video, I'll be putting the new Patriot through her paces, and comparing her to the old Just Trains model. But I must stress that this video is not sponsored by Caledonia Works. I'll start by doing something I've wanted to do ever since finding out about the new Patriot, and that is a comparison between the old Just Trains and new Caledonia Works models of the same locomotive type. For this comparison, I've set up two versions of 5541 Duke of Sutherland in the LMS Crimson Lake livery, as seen on the Bachmann branchline model. CW's Patriot add-on was released on Saturday the 16th of March 2024. It costs £20 or $43.63 NZD at full price, which is a bit steep for a Train Simulator add-on, if you ask me. I will say that I was kind of surprised to learn that the LMS Patriot project, the people behind a new build that I'll discuss later, have officially endorsed this add-on, and that, according to one of CW's Facebook posts, a portion of the earnings will be donated to the project. Godspeed, chaps. As for what the LMS Patriot even is, this was a class of 460 tender engines designed by Henry Fowler. A total of 52 examples were built between 1930 and 1934, with 42 being built at Crewe and the remainder at Derby. The design was directly based on the London and North Western Railway Clawton class, and indeed, the first two examples, numbers 5500 Patriot and 5501 St Dunstan's, were actually rebuilt Clawtons. Upon completion of their rebuilds in November 1930, what later became 5500 and 5501 retained their former Clawton names and numbers, initially staying as 5971 Croxteth and 5902 Sir Frank Ree respectively. To make things less confusing, I will only be referring to the engines by their post-1934 numbers from now on. Caledonia Works also brought the original Clawton to Train Simulator a while back, but the pack is split into two volumes, and in my opinion it's too expensive at £17 or $35.31 NZD per volume. I think I'll wait until another sale before considering buying the Clawton. Just after World War II, between 1946 and 1948, 18 Patriots were rebuilt with Stanier tenders and Type 2A boilers, and in this condition they looked borderline identical to the rebuilt Royal Scots locomotives. As for the remaining 34 Patriots, they were never rebuilt, and incidentally, you can also get the rebuilt Patriot in Train Simulator. This add-on was made a few years ago by Bossman Games, who are now called Precision Locomotive Developments, and it costs £13, or 27 New Zealand dollars, on their website. The engines spent most of their working lives hauling passenger trains on the West Coast Main Line, so they could be seen in places such as London, Liverpool, Manchester, Crewe, and Carlisle. Curiously, 7 members of this class never received names, but the remainder were either named after soldiers, military units, historical figures, an aircraft carrier in one case, and resort towns served by the LMS, amongst other things and people. 5 examples of the named engines were 5511 Isle of Man, 5519 Lady Godiva, 5520 Llandudno, 5537 Private E. Sykes VC, and 5541 Duke of Sutherland. Patriot number 5520 is not to be confused with the KiwiRail DXC class diesel locomotive of the same number. Just for the heck of it, here is a comparison between the original and rebuilt versions of locomotive number 5532 Illustrious, named after an aircraft carrier in the Royal Navy. She was built at Crewe Works in 1933 and rebuilt in June 1948. This thing wasn't withdrawn from service until February 1964, at which point she was 31 years old. For whatever reason, BMG's rebuilt Patriot pack doesn't include the experimental apple green livery, which was briefly carried by 45531 Sir Frederick Harrison and 45540 Sir Robert Turnbull. Instead, the pack only comes with LMS lined and plain black, as well as British Railways lined green or black. That's it. Contrary to what some people think, I actually like the experimental green livery, and I was happy to see that it's included in the Caledonia Works pack, although I don't know if any unrebuilt Patriots ever had this livery in real life. All the unrebuilt Patriots were withdrawn between 1960 and 1962, while the last surviving rebuilt Patriot, number 45531 Sir Frederick Harrison, wasn't withdrawn until October 1965. Sadly, none of the original Patriot locomotives, be they rebuilt or unrebuilt, survived into preservation, but in 2008, a project started with the aim of building a brand new Patriot. Said engine is not actually a new member of the class, but rather a replica of locomotive number 5551, and although the original never carried a name, the replica is named the Unknown Warrior after an unidentified British soldier who lost his life in World War I. The soldier is now buried at Westminster Abbey in London, but as for the locomotive, she's now based at the Tyseley Locomotive Works near Birmingham, but the project is not expected to be finished for at least another 4 years. Apart from 5551, the Unknown Warrior, another one of my favourite members of the class is number 5543, Home Guard. Not only because there was a British sitcom all about the Home Guard, namely Dad's Army, but also because I've got a model of this very same locomotive in BR green with the number 45543. For context, all the LMS locomotives, or at least all the LMS locomotives that survived into the BR era, had 40,000 added to their numbers upon the formation of British Railways in January 1948. The Just Trains Patriot was good for its time, but in many areas she hasn't aged well, as you saw earlier. For one thing, that version didn't include all 52 members of the class, even with the bonus pack of BR liveries installed alongside the base pack, which only had LMS liveries. Meanwhile, Caledonia Works' version does include all 52 Patriots, complete with several liveries and model variations to boot, in order to depict the original class throughout its entire history from 1930 to 1962. The liveries are as follows: LMS Works Grey, dated 1930 to 1934, 3 variants of LMS Crimson Lake, 1930 to 1934, 1934 to 1937, and 1937 to 1945. Then LMS Post-War Lined or Plain Black, dated 1945 to 1948, British Railways Plain Black, BR Experimental Green, BR Lined Black, with Gill Sands lettering or the early crest on the tender, and BR Brunswick Green, with the early or late crest, and in clean or weathered condition to boot. It's also worth mentioning that, on all but one of the LMS liveries, you can customize the model to run with or without smoke deflectors, as well as displaying LNWR or LMS style driving wheels. And of course, what you're seeing here is a demonstration of changing these features in the scenario editor. The only difference I've noticed between these two wheel designs is the larger hub on the LNWR wheels. As for the British Railways variants, they don't have as many customization options as the LMS variants. There's a long list of features on the Patriot locomotive, and the full list can be seen on the Caledonia Works website. Highlights include, but are not limited to, smoke particles that change depending on the season, 3D lettering on the nameplates, performance mode, which switches off the firebox glow and other things in order to improve the frame rate, a working water scoop under the tender, although even when you look for it it's quite hard to see, then a fire intensity synchronized with the exhaust beat, and authentic sounds recorded by Steam Sounds Supreme. Considering that the real 5551, The Unknown Warrior, hasn't been finished yet, I'm not sure what locomotive SSS could have recorded the sounds from. The main spacebar whistle reminds me of the old 7F class 080 that Digital Traction made ages ago, not to be confused with the iconic Somerset and Dorset Joint Railway 280 that was also classified as 7F. The 080 was bundled in a 2-in-1 pack with the Fowler 4F class 060, but DT recently discontinued the add-on, and I seem to recall they did that because they thought the pack wasn't up to modern standards, or something of that nature. As I've come to expect from newer Caledonia Works products, there are loads of different camera angles accessed by pressing the left and right arrow keys when you're in the cab view. Said cab view can be accessed by pressing the 1 key, not the numpad 1, mind. Something I forgot to mention until now is the auto fireman. This can be activated by pressing Ctrl R, and details on how this works can be found in the manual. But this is essentially just an assistant for any drivers who don't want to deal with firing and driving at the same time. It's interesting to see this feature on a Caledonia Works product, since I remember hearing about it being on Bossman Games products as well. Speaking of which, here's the rebuilt Patriot again, but this time she's on the Coniston branch. The CW Patriot is not the easiest thing in the world to drive, but she isn't the hardest thing to drive either. I've found that, regardless of the fuel levels or regulator and reverser settings, she struggles to accelerate on gradients steeper than 1 in 80. Once you've read through the manual and practiced in-game a few times, it shouldn't be too difficult to get the hang of driving the Patriot. And that goes for the rebuilt one as well. As I remember doing with the GT3 gas turbine locomotive, I also took a Patriot for an endurance test on one of my favourite TS Classic routes, namely Western Lines of Scotland. This was a run over the 29.9 mile long section from Newton Stewart to Castle Douglas, which has gradients as steep as 1 in 60. Despite being in LMS condition, I had 5517 hauling 7 British Rail Mark II coaches because historical accuracy be damned, and I made sure to set up these particular coaches with the same numbers as real Mark II coaches that ended up being exported to New Zealand and rebuilt in some bizarre ways. Thinking back to the Patriot endurance test, the challenge I set for myself was to try and complete the run without stopping to build up steam. After the descent from Newton Stewart station down to the Cree Viaduct, there's a long 1 in 80 climb from the abandoned Palnure station up to Creetown, and the gradient doesn't really level out until you get to Gatehouse of Fleet, and that incline gets as steep as 1 in 65 at one point. The best way to summarise this section of Western Lines of Scotland is thus: you go up one steep hill and down another a few times over. The difficult inclines are the main reason why I like to use this section as a testing ground for bigger locomotives. Of course, it would be pretty much pointless to try something like a little Andrew Barclay 040 or a Ruston 48 on this section. Fortunately, after a lot of hard work on the inclines, there's a long descent pretty much the whole way from Loch Scarrow station to the Loch Ken viaduct. Then it's an easy cruise along a mostly level section through Parton and across Michael before arriving at Castle Douglas, the junction for the 10-mile long branch line to Kirkcudbright. At the end of the day, I think the LMS Patriot pack from Caledonia Works isn't all that bad. The things I like most about this pack are the good modelling by Mr. Wilson and the inclusion of all 52 members of the class. There's not much I don't like about this pack, and the only thing that comes to mind is the lack of animation on the reverser rod. Meanwhile, the driving experience offers a decent challenge. After all, what's life without the occasional challenge? Of course, I can easily recommend this new Patriot to anyone who's a fan of LMS steam locomotives. But if you're not prepared to pay the full price like I did, I suggest waiting until the pack goes on sale. I'm looking forward to the future releases from Mr. Wilson and his team, especially the London and North Western Railway P1 Class 282, since I had an idea to use her for cameo appearances in an eventual review on the North Eastern Railway Long Boiler 060. Of course, that review won't be made until the P1 is released.